Hey guys, welcome to the World War II lecture. This is just be an introduction to kind of the major players in World War II. These notes can be found on Google Classroom, but this is just me walking you through who each person is and kind of their role that they're going to play in World War II. So FDR is going to be our first one. We've talked quite extensively about FDR dealing with the Great Depression, kind of his rise to power in the United States. He's going to take over, like we said, after Hoover during the Great Depression. He's going to carry us almost through the entirety of World War II. He is going to represent the United States. He is going to be a Democrat at the time. Remember, he's going to expand government a lot during the Great Depression. He's going to expand it even more during World War II. He is going to be our only president that is going to be confined to a wheelchair. He's going to be stricken with polio. Which the American people didn't know about, because remember we talked about we didn't want we didn't want FDR to seem weak, so none of the public knew about it. The media kept it quiet, which is more extraordinary than anything. He was a very isolationist president, meaning he wanted to kind of maintain the isolation of the United States. He wanted the United States to focus on itself. He didn't want the United States to get into war. He wanted to fix all the problems going on with the United States until we couldn't kind of hold out anymore with Pearl Harbor. One kind of negative, and we'll talk about this in the next video, was concentration camps. Concentration camps did exist in the United States during this time, during World War II. Not to the extent nearly as Germany is going to put them. They're going to have the death camps. They're going to have Auschwitz. They're going to have all the big camps over there that are going to be death camps. They're going to be working people to death. But we are going to have a type of concentration camps, which I will talk about in the next video. Our next player is going to be Mussolini. He's going to be our leader for Italy at this time, which is going to make up the Axis alliance, which is going to be Mussolini, Tojo, and Hitler for those big powers into play. So Mussolini from Italy, he's going to be a fascist. So they're going to be controlling kind of the daily lives of the people. They're going to be very strict. He's going to be a dictator at the time. Before he's going to get into politics, he's actually going to be a history teacher. So things are looking up for me. But he's going to be considered a coward as a leader, as a person. He's really not going to have his own control of what's going on in his country. He's going to listen to Hitler. He's going to listen to kind of the other players in the world, and he's not going to have a kind of a strong backbone for his country. So it's going to be a little bit different for him. At the end of the war, so when Italy removes itself from the war, it's going to be towards the fall of Germany, but his own people are actually going to capture him, and they're going to draw and quarter him, which means they're going to put him in the streets. They're going to tie a horse to each arm and each leg and have the horses run in opposite directions, essentially tearing him apart. So dating back to our Middle Ages, dating back to our kings and queens and kind of our feudalism and royalty, this was kind of the worst death that you could have because your body was strewn across the countryside and wasn't given a proper burial, all those kinds of things. So this was 1945 that this is happening, and Mussolini's that's his downfall, this is his fate. I know there's a little bit of glare on Tojo, so I apologize for that, but like I said, these notes are up on Google Classroom. With Tojo, he's going to be our Prime Minister of Japan. Okay, so he's going to be in charge of the military. He's going to be very militaristic in what's going on. He's going to look to his military commanders to see what is the military going to do next. He's going to listen to their input, but he's going to be the head of operations. He is going to report solely to the Emperor of Japan. So what we think about our president has to talk to Congress, has to talk to all these different people. The Emperor didn't have to talk to anybody. The Emperor was the sole person of Japan, so he was the one that commanded everything. Kind of day-to-day operations he left to his prime ministers and left to the ministers of different operations, but there is an emperor at this time. So like I said, Tojo is the prime minister. He's going to be responsible for the rape of Nanking. Okay, now with the rape of Nanking, what's going to happen is Japan at this time, so before the United States gets into war, Japan is on an island, obviously, and they are looking for resources. They don't have natural resources that they need in order to conduct the war that they want. So they have to go into China, they have to go into Korea to go in to get oil, to get raw materials, to expand their empire. With Nanking, what's going to happen is they're going to go in and, just like it says there, with the women and children, soldiers are being raping them. With the men, it's just going to be execution style, kill anyone on sight. And it was just to show their dominance and show their power in the East, to control the Pacific entirely. And that's where Hawaii is going to get in trouble. After the rape of Nanking, the United States is really going to shut down trade to Japan. And this is where Japan starts to get mad at the United States. The other thing that Tojo is going to do is, if you guys remember, we talked about reparations, and we talked about some changes that the United States wanted to make on Germany in order to restrict their movement and restrict their power going into or coming out of World War I. One of those things was tonnage of battleships. Okay, so they said if you have a battleship, it can't be a certain size, it has to be under that size. And one thing that Tojo does is he looks at this as a loophole and says, well, they never said anything about aircraft carriers. So what the Japanese military is going to do and Japanese Navy is going to do is they're going to create all these aircraft carriers to carry planes, to have a further reach, and they're going to start creating smaller boats to follow these aircraft carriers around. Frigates, submarines, destroyers, kind of our carrier groups that we know today are all going to come from the mind of Tojo, and is really a revolutionary mind militarily in that sense. And that's all going to lead, again, to Pearl Harbor. As we move along, we come to Germany with Hitler. You guys got to read some of Mein Kampf, which was hopefully eye-opening to see what his mind was actually looking like and how he rationalized what he did. He is diagnosed when he leaves the military after World War I from Hungary. He is going to be diagnosed as a bipolar psychopath before he is put into prison. When he leaves prison, he starts to gain power, he starts to gain notoriety, he starts running as a chancellor of Germany. Once he starts gaining enough power, he actually finds his records from the military and from these hospitals and actually has them destroyed. He actually doesn't get all of them, but he tries to destroy any negative press, anything that people could have dug up on him to show that, hey, we shouldn't be trusting this guy. And he actually destroys all these records for the most part. He believes, like you guys should have seen, he believes that this Aryan race is this mythical race of people that is founded in Germany. It's supposed to be the people of Atlantis, and all of these great people have come from the Aryan race, and he believes that the Aryan race will rise again through Germany. He's going to create the Nazi Party, which one thing I want to make sure and be clear with, Nazis, it's not, remember we talked about the Huns with World War I, we talked about how we're going to dehumanize these people. Nazis is just a political party. So when you say, oh, well, it's the Nazis doing this, it's the political group. It'd just be like saying Democrats or Republicans for us. Nazis are just a political party. So when we talk about that, we're still fighting Germans, we're still fighting people, but we dehumanize them a little bit more by calling them Nazis because we didn't have a Nazi party at the time. We have a Nazi party here in the United States today. They don't hold too much power, but those still exist today. The other thing Hitler is going to be a dictator. Everything's going to have to run through him. He is going to have channels. He is going to have other chancellors below him. But they're all going to be Nazis. They're all going to be from his same party. They're all going to be appointed by him. They're all going to be well-trusted people in his group. And then lastly, one person you guys also read about was Winston Churchill. He's going to come from the United Kingdom or England. He's going to be the prime minister there. So he's going to, again, there is a monarchy there, but a little bit different dynamic. They are higher up, so the prime minister has more power. The queen, the king at this time are really figureheads, so they're just there to say, oh, you're on the money, or you are the king and queen, and you follow along this bloodline. Churchill's the one that's really in power. some of the things with Churchill at this time. So he's going to be a great writer. He's going to be a great leader of the UK at this time. One of his problems is he's going to be an alcoholic. So he's going to be under so much stress, under so much scrutiny at this time to save his island that they're living on and try to push back this monster that is the German army trying to roll in at every chance they can, that he's going to become an alcoholic. One kind of interesting note on this is there's a man named Norman Shelley who worked for the BBC, which is the British Broadcasting Channel in England, and that man, Norman Shelley, is going to be giving most of the speeches to the British people over the radio or over TV at this time. He is also the voice of Winnie the Pooh. So if you listen to some speeches of Norman Shelley or of Winston Churchill, one being "We'll Fight Them on the Beaches" that you guys read the other week, that speech was actually given by Norman Shelley, not by Winston Churchill. So kind of an interesting fact there. We talked about appeasement a little bit, and I'll talk about it more in my next video. But with appeasement, we were trying to keep Germany happy. We were trying to keep them from going to war. We didn't want to go to war. And Churchill was adamantly against appeasement. He went to Chamberlain, who was the prime minister before him, and said, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep appeasing them. We got to stop them now, or else things are just going to get worse, which Churchill was right about. And he was adamantly against appeasement. And then towards the end of the war, when we start talking about the Cold War after World War II, he's going to coin the term the Iron Curtain, dealing with the Soviet Union. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But just to give you guys an overview, these kind of are 5 big people. We have the Triple Alliance, or the Axis powers, of Mussolini in Italy, Tojo in Japan, Hitler in Germany, and then FDR and Churchill of the United States and the UK. Stalin is going to be another power, but we're going to talk more about him when we get to the Cold War, and less about right now with World War II. So this is a video covering these people. Next video will be kind of covering World War II in general.